bet you anything it's those creepazoids from the Negamoon. Mina, time to go to work. Mm-hmm. Moon Crystal! Venus Star Power!
I may just be one little cat, but there's gotta be a way to stop this Creepmeister. Okay. Artemis, here's your chance to be heroic. Come on, guys. Whose side are you on anyways?
My side. Reel him in.
Luna!
Oh, please, Artemis. You cannot beat all these wigged-out animals all by yourself.
Sure I can. Stand back and watch me. I'm gonna prove to you I'm not Klutz the cat.
But you already have.
Really?
Scat cats.
Luna!
Venus Long Chaining Circle! You used your powers to turn innocent animals into vicious Negamoon drones. Shame on you for terrorizing people. It's up to us to stop you. I fight for love and justice and live to banish all that is evil. I am Sailor Moon. I'm Sailor Venus. And you're burnt toast. Toast? When I'm done, she'll be nothing but breadcrumbs.
Attack now!
Oh no!
Voices from Sailor Moon. Is that right? We have Sailor Jupiter here, who's Susan. And Stephanie is Sailor Venus.
They're just holding up these pretty pictures.
Yeah. Can I get you guys to do something? Just like interact, like as Sailor Jupiter and Sailor Venus. Be actresses and come up with an impromptu Sailor Venus, Sailor Jupiter scene, and then we'll just hold up the pictures and you can shake the pictures and all like.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Improvise something quickly.
All right. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Venus. Venus, where is Sailor Moon?
I have no idea.
What are you talking about? Was she at school? She wasn't studying. I know that.
I suspect there's trouble coming.
Trouble? Could it be Tuxedo Mask?
I hope Tuxedo Mask's not in trouble. We always have to rescue him.
I know. Well, I don't think that's right. I think he always rescues us, which I have a problem with. But anyway.
We won't get into that right now.
We won't.
And then you come over here and I'll go. What? What are you talking about? And that's
Is that Tuxedo Mask?
that's Al Pacino walking in on the only voice I can do.
Was that out?
Sort of.
It's so authentic.
Apparently it wasn't a good one. Okay, so there's an event you guys are going to tonight.
Yeah.
What is it exactly?
It's UTARPA, which is the U of T
Anime and Role-Playing Association.
And they meet every month, and they show hours and hours worth of anime. Starting, I think it's tonight around 6:30 and going until quite late. It's just non-stop Japanese animation.
Right.
Really?
Yep.
And I hear you guys have sort of become fans through this show, through doing work on the show.
Yeah, I hadn't been exposed to anime before this, and now that I'm kind of part of an anime family, I got more and more informed that I went to the last UTARPA convention, and it just blew my mind. The quality of the images, the sophistication of the stories, the stuff we never see in North America.
The Japanese very much are into, like, they have comics there that there are no dialogue, and just they do like simple storytelling. They're still into the stories, and whereas North America, we get all those comics where it's just
There's no dialogue in the comic?
sometimes
Wow.
they have those kind of just picture by picture, but panels. So yeah, I see what you mean. So so what is it about the anime that kind of excites you guys? I mean, is it the style? It definitely has a look.
Well, I have to say one thing. This is going to be my first anime experience. Because Stephanie has.
So it's Stephanie.
Stephanie's the one, and so this tonight will be the first time that I can actually find out what it's all about firsthand myself. Cause
it'll hook you. I'm telling you.
Okay.
We get tons and tons of these in. What do you think that is? It's a big thing.
Yeah. Well, it's neat to find that out because we don't know that. We have no idea about that.
You have no idea?
No, we didn't know when we started doing the series. We had no clue of the scale of this cult. We just had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I actually, maybe in the beginning, nobody really knew because it wasn't, but as soon as it came on the zone, I'll tell you, it was a huge hit.
Well, it's that way in every country in which it appears. Did you know that?
I don't know why. There's something about it. I mean, I don't know. I always figured positive female role models.
Well, it's also...
I always found is great.
Also, you get an ongoing story, which you normally don't get in cartoons at all. And that way you get to know the characters a whole lot better. They have this mythic history that goes on for centuries. It's a cosmic soap opera.
Yeah.
That's what it is. You know what? It does
opera.
have that. It has, tuxedo mask, and and they're in school, which is a big thing.
So there's a normal life and then a...
relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also Sailor Moon herself, who is, whenever I see that mouth of hers, the way she's always going like, that incredibly zany animation. I love that. Because that's a real little girl, real little tomboy.
Yeah, I know. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, Susan Roman and Stephanie Morgenstern, thank you very much for coming up, and Sailor Moon's coming up next.
Everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Moonstar Radio. Today we are getting into a really incredible interview with Emilie Claire Barlow, who did the voice of Sailor Mars for a portion of Sailor Moon R, that's season 2, and Sailor Venus for seasons 3 and 4 of the original English dub of Sailor Moon. The clip you heard at the beginning today was actually the original voice of Sailor Venus from season 1 and season 2, which is Stephanie Morgenstern. And the reason I put that in there is because I did a lot of digging, and that clip is pretty much the only interview I was able to find. So I wanted to share that with you, and I love her portrayal of Venus as much as Emilie's, which we get later on. So this was a great time for that. And I'm going to give you just a little info about her. Born to a Canadian family in Geneva, Switzerland, and raised in Montreal, Quebec, Morgenstern is married to actor Mark Ellis, who wrote with her as a writing partner. She has a brother, Mark Morgenstern, with whom she also co-writes and directs with. She began her career when she was 15 and has worked extensively on stage, film, and television in both English and French. Her most widely seen feature film credits have been The Sweet Hereafter, Maelstrom, Revoir Julie, I think that's correct, and Forbidden Love. Morgenstern also provided the voice for Yin in the Disney cartoon Yin Yang Yo, and Regina in the original Dino Crisis game produced by Capcom. Widely recognized as the original, well, because she was, the original voice actor of Mina Ano / Sailor Venus in the Deke and Pioneer Entertainment productions of Sailor Moon during the first and second seasons. When asked to return, Morgenstern declined to on account of other commitments to on-screen projects. Morgenstern was replaced by Emilie Claire Barlow, who we will hear from later today, Rei Hino's second voice actress during Sailor Moon R. Morgenstern, however, did reprise the role of Mina in the Sailor Moon films, The Promise of the Rose, Hearts in Ice, and Black Dream Hole. Morgenstern makes occasional appearances at anime conventions at the request of fans for Sailor Moon panel discussions. I believe the reason she's in the movies as well is because the entire DiC cast did the movies. So they did all of them, even though they go up to Super S. And then Cloverway only did seasons 3 and 4 of the actual show itself. They didn't touch the movies, as far as I know. So that's just some information about her. I think she does a great job as Sailor Venus. But let me just set up Emilie then, because we're about to dig into her interview, which I'm excited for you guys to get into. We learn a lot of interesting things about her. Born to parents who were professional musicians, she was encouraged to sing and study several instruments, including piano, cello, clarinet, and violin. By age 7, she has begun her career singing television and radio commercials. Barlow's first album, Sings, was released in 1998. She has received 3 nominations for Canada's Juno Awards and was named Female Vocalist of the Year at 2008 National Jazz Awards. Amongst her musical influences, Barlow has named artists Ella Fitzgerald, Tony Bennett, and Stevie Wonder. Barlow has also provided voices for several animated television series, including Sailor Venus and Sailor Mars, as we know, in Sailor Moon, Bakugan Battle Brawlers, and Total Drama, which she talks a lot about today. I think she really enjoyed Total Drama the most. That's the vibe I get from her, and that's fine. But yeah, so there's a little about Emilie. And let's just jump into the interview. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Also, I put a song by her, just a little preview at the end today, because I actually really love her version of this popular song. I think you guys will too. And there will be links to support her, as well as Stephanie and whatever I can find to support her in today's episode description. So check those out. All right, let's get into the show.
Hear me okay?
Yeah. Thanks for willing to do this.
No problem. Sorry it took me so long.
Oh, no. It's
Thanks for being persistent.
So I can just start from the beginning in terms of outside of your music career. I was wondering what it was like being in Oh, What a Night.
Oh, wow. That's a great way to kick things off. You know, I haven't thought about that movie in so long. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I was 14 or 15 years old, and I was already singing professionally.
Right.
And so I was kind of working already. And I remember that I was asked to do this kind of corporate show, and it was a sort of unusual from what I was normally doing, which was singing in studios. And some of the other kids that were in this corporate show had agents, like acting agents. And so it was around that time when I said to my mom, I want to get an acting agent. She's like, you want to act? Okay. And I'd never. So we looked around and we found an agent. And then, you know, my agent started sending me out on auditions. Again, I didn't really have much experience with the auditioning process. And this movie came What a Night, and I actually auditioned for the female lead in the movie. And for whatever reason, they took my performance to be comedic, and I wasn't trying to be funny.
Yeah.
And so they ended up casting me as this character of Lorraine, who is just a little part in the movie, and she's supposed to be a kind of a comedic role. And I was excited to learn that I got a part in a movie, and even more excited when I learned that Corey Haim was the star of the movie.
Right.
Because he was like a teen idol. You know, I had pictures of him on my wall from Tiger Beat magazine, and now I was going to be in a movie with him. So the whole thing was quite surreal. But one thing that I do remember is that some people go on a movie set and they think, I love this. This is where I was meant to be. I did not have that feeling. I did not fall in love with the process of being on set, and there's a lot of waiting around. So I think I decided kind of after a few more little appearances, it wasn't really for me. But I want to go back and watch that movie because I bet it's hilarious.
How did you feel then when a voiceover opportunity came along in comparison?
I loved it because for me, I grew up spending time in studios. My mother is a singer and my father is a drummer, and they were both like session musicians, which was, they were extremely busy working, recording musicians in the 70s and 80s in Toronto. There was a very big music scene in Toronto. People were coming there to make records. And so they would work every day of the week and sometimes on the weekend in studios. So that was a very comfortable place for me to be. And I started singing on commercials myself when I was about 8 years old. I was in the studio and they needed a kid's voice and they could hear that I was humming the melody and I seemed to have a good sense of pitch. And so I started. And then I've actually told this story, I think, before, but I was probably not much older than that. And I had done a few jingles, as we call them. And I went in to do what I thought was a jingle, but it turned out that it was going to be a voiceover. And I felt very comfortable singing. Singing was something that came very natural to me. I think I knew that I was good at it. I felt confident. But they put a script in front of me and it was like for a fabric softener or something. And I think I had to say, "Oh, mommy, my towel feels so soft," or something like that. And I got so nervous. I didn't want to talk. And, my mom could sense that the tears were welling up in my eyes, and all the clients are waiting in the control room. And she took me aside and she said, "Honey, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And I said, "Mommy, I don't know how to talk. I only know how to sing."
Oh.
And she said, "Oh, okay. Well, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to." But I got through it. And then for many years after that, I mostly stuck to singing. And then I think when I was around 17 or 18, a friend of mine, actually you might know Cal Dodd. He is a voice actor. He was like the original Wolverine.
Okay, yeah.
And he's a very, very, very busy, prolific voice actor. And he's a great singer too. And I used to sing with him. And he said to me, "Hey, like, why aren't you doing voiceover work? You should be doing voiceover work." I was like, "I don't know." And so he introduced me to his agents, Edna Kubiar and Paul Smith at ETM, Edna Talent Management. And they have been my agents ever since. So that's going back now almost 30 years, 25 years. And so that's where I really started doing voiceover work and going to voice auditions for announcer stuff, for cartoons. That's really when it started.
So how long after that then did you get the opportunity to replace Katie in Sailor Moon?
Very quickly. Actually, it was I was very lucky because it was my first audition and I booked it. And the stars really aligned. I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, and I had the skills, and I had a really good voice match for Katie. So I got sent out to this audition where I knew that I was going to be replacing somebody to try to match their voice. And so they sat me in a room, and I had never seen Sailor Moon before, and I watched it, and I had the scripts, and I had to do my best to sound like her. And like I said, it came fairly easily because we just naturally have very similar sounding voices. But I think that my music training, my musicality, my sense of rhythm and my sense of pitch really, really helped me because I was able to find where she was, like an actual pitch, and match it and hear that and recognize it. I was also able to match her speaking pattern and cadence, which is something that's really important when you're doing dubbing, because you have to fit in the dialogue in a very predetermined space time. So I think that the stars aligned for me, my musicality, the luck of my voice sounding like hers, and signing on with the agency. And I booked that. And I remember that I was out with my family, I think like at an amusement park that day. And I don't even think that we had cell phones at that point. Well, maybe I had a cell phone, but I remember that I used to have to use a payphone and call to get my messages. And I called and talked to my agent, and he said, "You booked the job."
Episode 66 of the Deke English dub features Emilie's debut as Sailor Mars.
Hand it over, brat, or face the consequences.
Back off, Rube! If that overbearing lout wants you, Reenie, he'll have to deal with the Sailor Scouts first.
Fine by me, Sailor Ditches. I'll wipe out the lot of you once and for all.
You can try! Jupiter! Thunderclap! Zap! Mars! Celestial! Fire! Surround! Venus! Love! Shade and circle!
That's all you got?
Amy, Ray, Mina? Reenie must go now! Go quickly, hurry!
She's going nowhere.
It's some kind of supergravity beam making us heavy! We've got to find it, Scouts! I don't have the strength, Sailor Mercury! Maybe if we pool our powers! How? You mean we should try the Sailor Planet power? But without Sailor Moon, we won't have enough power with just the four of us! We've got to do something! We have to save Reenie! You're right! Let's do it! Jupiter! Star Power! Venus! Star Power! Mercury! Star Power! Mars! Star Power! Sailor Planet Power!
Pathetic!
Reenie, get going! Get out of here now! Oh! Do as I say, Reenie, now! Huh?
Don't worry, Mars. I'll take care of Reenie. You look out for yourselves.
No, the kid's mine!
It doesn't happen every day that you book your first
Right.
every audition you go to. And it was a really it was a great learning experience working on Sailor Moon, because like I said, we had to do dubbing. You seem like you probably know a lot about this world of dubbing and anime, and different methods of supporting cartoons. Am I right?
And well, because Katie was actually the first voice actor that I interviewed back in like this time last year, and I thought I was going to ask next because both Susan, Katie, and Linda had like separate stories of their own personal experience with Nicole.
Nicole was one of my very first voice directors, and she was really tough. She was a tough director. She would often ask us to do takes over and over and over and over again. And, there was a lot of yelling in Sailor Moon, so it was very taxing, very taxing. And, I'm probably at that time was more naturally a kind of a soft-spoken person, probably needed to work me to get the volume that she wanted. But I would say that she was known for being a tough director,
Right.
challenging and demanding, and so I would say that those sessions were quite stressful due to all of those things.
Mhm. And did you have to audition for Mina too then?
Yeah, and that was a really strange turn of events because there was a shakeup. There was a shakeup of all kinds of casting, and there was shakeups on the production team and the director. And if I do recall correctly, I remember getting called in to audition for several different roles.
Okay.
Now, Katie was back, I believe. You probably know more than I do. And I remember being very surprised when I got cast as Sailor Venus because, and then I was really very much trying to voice match, and that's something I remember reading back in the day. Reading on fan forums and Sailor Moon forums, there was like a lot of backlash that they didn't like the way I was doing the voice, and I wanted to say, I'm being directed. I don't get to decide,
Yeah.
But it was such a fun experience because I learned so much. And whenever we got to record together as groups, that was just the most fun.
Mhm.
Because, sometimes there would be 2 or 3 of us that would get to record together. We had a lot of lines together. And it just really helped with your energy. It also helped, especially when you were having a tough day or you were feeling like the director was being hard on you, and you had the camaraderie and the support of your fellow actors and castmates, and we were all sort of in the same boat. So.
And could you personally relate to Mina at all?
No, not. I would like to. I'm going to answer that question honestly, and I more felt a kinship with Sailor Mars, with Ray.
Okay.
Yeah. I really liked the character.
Right. Yeah. And I know one person from the original cast who's never been interviewed and nobody can really find now. Did you interact much with Sarah LaFleur, who was Uranus?
Oh, I remember her name, and I don't think that we did many sessions together, if any.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember doing sessions with Susan Roman.
Yep.
I think that I remember doing sessions with Katie at some point when the transitions had all happened.
Okay.
Oh, and who played the character, and she had the little tiny baby voice.
Oh,
this was in the later seasons.
Rini.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember what her name was.
Oh,
and we
Sugar.
did some sessions. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we did sessions together. I remember that. But I love all the people that were involved in the show. I mean, it's a great group.
And I don't know if you've ever been told of the reason why the final season wasn't dubbed. Did you know about that?
No, tell me.
Because in the final season, there's a group of 3 guys that are also the love interests for the girls, but when they transform like into their sailor counterparts, they transform into girls.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I know that back then, like, that wouldn't have been allowed Cartoon
They
Network.
were ahead of their time.
Yeah.
It's incredible to me how solid and dedicated the Sailor Moon fandom is.
Mm-hmm.
It really blows my mind.
And so then after that, I guess what the next voiceover thing would have been in 16.
Yep. There were a couple of other things in there. There was a show that I did called Bad Dog, which was like a kid's cartoon, and I played the daughter Penelope. That was also one of my first jobs, and actually that was my first original animation job where they were animating to my voice, so I didn't have to. It wasn't dubbing. And then there were a couple of series that we recorded that never actually ended up getting picked up. But 16 came around. It came a few years later. Yeah. And I remember auditioning for one of the lead characters again, and not getting cast, but then later on, getting this small part as one of the clones.
Yep.
And that was really the beginning of like the fresh. I mean, they just took over. They were just such a huge presence on the sort of teen animation scene, because it went from that to Stoked,
yep,
to Total Drama, so, and that was I was working a lot at that time.
And with Total Drama, was that a more involved audition process, or was that kind of just the same as other ones?
Well, that kind of has an interesting story too, actually. And I was also just thinking of a quick funny anecdote about 16. So I played Chrissy, who was one of the clones, and the show takes place, just for your viewers that might not know, it takes place in a mall, and it's a group of 6 teenagers that hang out at the mall, and the clones work at the khaki barn, which is kind of like the Gap. And so the names of the characters were Chrissy, Kirsten, and Kristen, I think. And okay, yeah, so Lauren Lipson played Kristen, I played Chrissy, and Stephanie Ann Mills played Kirsten. And we had several sessions where we would mix up Kirsten and Kristen, or like they couldn't remember who was who in the script. So finally, we're like, "Wait, am I Kristen, or are you Kirsten, or am I Kristen?" And so what they ended up doing was they ended up just writing our actual names in the script, because there were several times when people got too confused. So that was kind of funny. So then I auditioned for Total Drama, and I auditioned for several characters. I actually talked about this on my TikTok. I have a TikTok.
Okay, yeah.
All follow me on TikTok, because I answer questions about the Courtney character and Total Drama. And so I auditioned for several roles, and I didn't get anything.
Okay.
And I did not get cast in the show. And somebody else was cast as Courtney. And I believe that they recorded the first episode. And I don't know what happened. I don't know why or how, but I got called in as a replacement after the first episode. Isn't that crazy? I'm telling that story because it's widely known.
Yeah.
And it's not a secret or anything. And so I don't know what happened. I never asked, but I was extremely grateful to have the job, because it ended up being a very long running character for me. In fact, yesterday I just recorded pickups for Total Drama Rama.
Okay.
For the last episode of season 3. So it's been carrying on to this day, literally. And we just had so much fun doing that show, because I got to sing, and I got to really develop a character over time.
Right. And that's one thing that's really cool about it too, is that even though was on Cartoon Network, like you can appreciate it even like more as an adult. Like there's a lot of adult humor in it.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know it. And again, the fans of the show, I mean, I saw the press release that I'm sure you did too, that they're doing new seasons. And I'm so excited for the fans and for the show, because the fans have been asking for it for so long.
Right.
You know, so it's just, they made it happen.
Mm-hmm. And with Courtney too, is there, obviously she has like different sides to her, but what can you relate to the most?
Well, you know, they describe her as a type A personality, which I definitely am. I am similar to her in that way. I probably can have bossy tendencies, but I try to be a little bit nicer than she is. So yeah, I mean, there were some similarities for sure. But you know, she definitely has a sharp, mean edge to her at times, which, you know, I don't identify with, or hopefully not.
Right.
But it was really fun. I mean, it's fun to play that kind of a character. She has really funny lines. The writers are amazing. Really sarcastic. It's really kind of a big big personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when there was singing in the script, I said to the director, I said, "So is Courtney a good singer?" You know, they're like, "Oh yes, no, and she is." I was like, "Well, you never know." You know, like, no, we want her to be a good singer. Okay, I'll try.
And with the entire arc that you've been playing her, has there ever been anything where there was a really emotional headspace where you like there was like acting brought to it, or has it mostly just been comedic?
I think that when the love story between Courtney and Duncan was at its best, was at its sort of peak, they had a couple scenes together that were really, really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we got to do those scenes together in the studio, which was so fun. And you know, Drew is a great actor, so that really helped me. And that was, you know, it was also really nice to see that softer side of Courtney.
Right.
To see the vulnerable, tender side. I loved that we got to do that. And so yeah, that was a really nice moment of acting, and yeah, just being able to express another side of her.
Mm-hmm. And I did want to mention too, just in regards to your music, normally I'm more of a rock person in terms of what I listen to, but I did think your cover of Blame It On My Youth was really well done.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
That's so nice. I wasn't the song I was expecting you to say. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't that. It's a beautiful song. Classic.
And then aside from Courtney, with Lori and Elodie, were those just like given to you?
No, I auditioned.
Okay.
I auditioned for a bunch of different characters in the Redonkulous race. And actually what was so funny to me was that Katie and I were cast as a pair. I just thought that was really funny. I loved it. We had really good times. Unfortunately, our characters were not super long lived on the show, but yeah, Redonkulous race. And Stoked I did as well, and that was really fun because I got to play Mrs. Ridgemount, who was like the cool mom.
Yep.
And it was fun to play a character that wasn't a teenager too.
Mm-hmm. And I know the other anime you did with Bakugan, or your thoughts on, thoughts on stepping into the role of Alice.
I loved working on that show. I liked the Alice character, and the voice was a little bit more, I guess, a little bit breathier. And I liked the challenge, the challenge of dubbing. I always find that to be, I think, again, it speaks to the musician in me,
mm-hmm.
Getting the timing just right, and acting as you're doing that.
Right.
So I had a lot of fun working on that show. One of my best animation memories is Almost Naked Animals.
Oh yeah.
That show was so funny. I think, and you mentioned, with Total Drama, there's humor that is appealing to teenagers, but also adults.
Right.
And this one definitely had a similar. It was for littler kids, so, but it definitely had some jokes that adults would appreciate, and the cast was incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Rob Tinkler, Sean Cullen. I mean, it was really a stellar cast. The director was amazing, Merlan. I loved that show. I wish that show would have gone on forever.
Actually, yeah, I talked to, I think it was earlier in the year that I talked to Rob.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I love him. He is amazing.
Yeah.
He's really amazing. Yeah, it was really fun to watch him work.
Right, yeah.
And David Burney, also, he played Duck, and that character. I mean, the writing was so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I know with a more adult show with your role as Teresa and Forget About It.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was really great to get that part, because again, I was doing 2 shows at the time, and Forget About It was one of them, and the other one was called Peg Plus Cat.
Okay.
And in Peg Plus Cat, I played a mermaid, and in Peg Plus Cat is a really sweet show for little kids, teaching about, sort of basic concepts, learning about numbers and shapes, and I was playing this singing mermaid, and then I would go to my other job where I would play this, kind of rough teenage girl in this adult comedy, Forget About It, where we got to swear, and some of the stuff was pretty risque.
Yep.
And that was part of the fun of that show, because it was like, sorry, it's so dark. Sorry about that. That was part of the fun of that show, because I was like, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I get to say this. This is ridiculous. And one of the things that was really fun about working on Forget About It was that we got to do table readings. We got the whole cast met, and we would sit around the table and read through the episodes, and that was such a luxury to be able to do that. That show went through quite a challenging few years of development before it finally happened.
Yep.
I mean, I think I auditioned for it several years before it actually came to fruition. And so for a while, I didn't even think it was going to happen. And then it did. And we did 3 seasons.
Yep. Yeah, because I was about to ask. It looked like it went on for a few years.
Mm-hmm. I think it was 3. And yeah, I would have really loved for that one to continue on as well, because again, well, it's just the people, the engineers and the directors. It's just you get into a great groove. And Total Drama Rama, the season is over. Season 3 is over, and when I was signing off on the call, the Skype call to the director, it was like, okay, I'm gonna miss you guys. Just such a fun experience.
Mm-hmm. I guess, well, in terms of voiceover, is that the most recent thing that you've worked on in general?
That one, and a pretty recent one, is called The Remarkable Mr. King.
Okay.
That's pretty new, and I play a skunk named Chanel, and she plays clarinet. And it's a really sweet show as well. What else have I done recently? Total Drama Rama has been the most recent, which is fun because I'm doing the younger version of Courtney.
Yeah. And earlier on in your career, did you ever get any aspiration to move to LA or New York?
I didn't, and I think part of the reason was that, as I mentioned earlier, like I was working from a very young age, and I was working a lot. I mean, all throughout my 20s and 30s, I didn't feel like I was lacking for anything. thought, I've got a really good situation here. I'm getting a lot of auditions. I'm getting a lot of roles. I'm working with great people. And why would I leave? You know?
Right. And did your success in Japan with your music surprise you?
When I put out my album called, well, that's another reason that I didn't really leave, I think, is because I had a major musical community too in Toronto. When the album Like a Lover came out in 2005, which was my fourth album, I decided to hire an entertainment lawyer to take the album to this event that happens every year in France,
Okay.
and it's like a musical showcase conference where people who are buying shows and agents and record companies, and so he took that album with him to pitch it, to different labels to see if anyone would be interested in licensing it or distributing it. And one of the people that we were interested in was JVC in Japan, and they were very interested in it. And so they released a version of that album there. And then that followed with, I think, the next several albums were released there through JVC. And the first, I think it was Winter Wonderland, which was my first Christmas album that came out in 2006. That was the first time that I ever went. And they asked me to do a Christmas show at the Cotton Club, which is like a beautiful supper club, very reminiscent of a New York club. It was actually based off of the original Cotton Club in Harlem. So it's like a very plush, sophisticated room with like tiered seating. And I think the first time I went, I did 5 nights in a row there, 2 shows a night. And we did a couple shows in other places around Japan. And then since then, I've gone pretty much like every year and a half. I've been back. I think I've been 10 times. And I mean, for any musician who is a touring musician, just being able to travel the world with your band, your bandmate playing music, I mean, there's nothing better than that.
Right.
Experiencing different cultures, the food, the language, the music. Dreamy, really dreamy. Hard work. Like, as I said, we would land in the afternoon. We would, be completely turned around, jet lagged. And then the next day we'd do a sound check, and then 2 shows the next day, 2 shows the next day, 2 shows the next day, fly home. So not a lot of time to do too much exploring, but over subsequent visits, I've really grown to love Tokyo and been so lucky to explore it with my friends.
Yeah. And I was wondering too, if you ever worked with or met Kenny G, because my dad's sister actually married his brother.
Oh, okay. I never did.
Okay.
No. Of course I know who he is.
Yeah.
I think everyone does.
Yeah.
Pretty
have you been like starstruck in terms of anybody that you've gotten to work with musically?
I recall being starstruck when I met Celine Dion.
Okay, yeah.
This was a long time ago, and I was singing at the Juno Awards. The Juno is like Canada's Grammys.
Right.
So I was singing for the opening number of the show, backing up Quebec, Canadian singer from Quebec named Rock Voisine, and he had a very big hit that year. And so he had like a choir backing him up. And I was there, and I remember walking from the stage to my dressing room, and all of a sudden I turned, I felt a presence, an energy enter the room. And I looked over, and Celine Dion was like floating into the room, and she had this long black kind of cloak on. So that just made it all the more sort of mystical and magical. Mm-hmm. And she looked right at me, and I probably just looked like, she looked right at me and she said hello. And I think I was only about 18 at the time.
Okay.
She was, of course, a mega star already. So that was a bit of a starstruck moment.
Mm-hmm. And do you have usually the way that I end every interview I do is asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
I want people to remember me as a nice person. That's the most important thing. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about being a musician specifically, is the ability to create something that wasn't there, that didn't exist before. You make a piece, you start with nothing, you create a piece of music, and that piece of music has unlimited potential in terms of how it can affect other people's lives. I mean, I think we all have songs that I consider music to be like, it's the soundtrack to your life, obviously, so songs can bring you right back to a certain memory. Music gets you through difficult times, you celebrate great times. So being able to contribute to a lasting potential soundtrack to somebody's life feels like a pretty great legacy.
Mm-hmm. Or if there's, in regards to your like voiceover career, if there's anything that you want your fans of that to take away from your performances.
That's a really interesting question. I just appreciate so much. I appreciate how invested the fans of, I'll say specifically Total Drama, because that really has a life of its own.
Yeah.
I really appreciate how invested people are in the characters, and to me that says that the entire team that created the show did a really good job, of making these characters so strong that people hold onto them so fiercely.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everybody. It's the writers, the creators, the animators, the directors, and the voice actors. And so all of those things come together to create these characters that people just are keeping alive.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. It's really, really cool. I hope that I get to be on Total Drama again. I think they're doing a whole new cast, but I will cross my fingers that maybe some of us will get to make guest appearances along the way. That would be so fun.
Well, I'm sure you've seen too. I was just about to say that it seems like there's even a whole new legion for a fan base of that show, because there's like a bunch of new videos of like 7 minutes of Courtney being iconic and stuff like that.
Oh, it's crazy. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I joined when I joined TikTok, I was very late to the party.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and then he asked me a question about something like, have you ever done any, I can't remember. It was like, did you ever do any acting or something? I said, yes, I've done acting, voice acting, and I was Courtney. And it was like, what? All of a sudden I went from 0 to thousands of followers, most of whom are Courtney fans. And the thing that I couldn't believe was the amount of fan created accounts for Courtney, for Dunkney, I tell you, it brings me a lot of joy. I think it is so cool.
Mm-hmm. Do you get very many messages like about Sailor Moon still too?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And Bakugan, Total Drama is the number one, but Sailor Moon, I would say, is like a second to that. And again, those are the two really strong fan bases that are keeping it alive.
Yep.
So keep going and demand that Courtney come back.
Well, thanks. I'm glad that we finally got to do this.
Thank you very much. And thanks again for following up.
Yep.
And it was great to talk to you. And yeah, I watched some of your other interviews and they were really entertaining. So
well, thank you.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks.
Cool. Well, thanks again and have a great day.
that's it for this episode of Moonstar Radio. I'm so glad you guys were here to learn more about the voices behind the characters. So far, in this mini-series, separate from Moonstar Sailor Moon podcast, we've heard from Terry Hawks, the original voice of Sailor Moon. We've heard from Katie Griffin, Sailor Mars. We've heard from Susan Roman, Sailor Jupiter. And now we have heard a little from Stephanie Morgenstern and a lot from Emilie Claire Barlow. So we've got both Sailor Venuses and Sailor Mars from the original English dub available here for you guys to listen to. I love that Chris has all of these interviews. If you want to check out the videos for them, they are up on YouTube on his channel, Chris Mayick. Just search for his name there and you'll find them. But yeah, let us know what you thought of today's interview. One thing that I wanted to mention, as you guys heard from the clip that I chose to include, which was from the first time Emilie was playing Sailor Mars on the show, she jumped in at a really intense moment, and it required a lot of emotional range for the character of Sailor Mars, just right out the gate for her. And on top of that, she was supposed to be imitating Katie Griffin, which, as I think if there's any voice actors listening, I think they know it's a lot harder to imitate someone else than it is to just, do your own thing with the character. So I really have to commend her for that. And it's interesting to me that she got backlash, but I guess that makes sense because no matter what the change is always hard for people in general. And I'm assuming it was just one of those, it's not the original, so of course some people are not going to be pleased. That's just how it goes, right? But she stepped into the role really well, and I remember a friend having to tell me that the voices changed when I was younger, because I didn't notice. She did such a good job, in my opinion. Of course, now I've developed my ear more, and I know that there's a change, so I can hear it way more clearly. But it definitely was something that had to be directly put into my face for me to get it. So, good job on her as both Sailor Mars and Sailor Venus. Do you guys have a preference for her characterizations? Do you prefer Mars over Venus for Emilie? Let us know in the comments wherever you listen. And yeah, I'm going to close out the show today with Emilie's version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. I love this song. I've always loved this song. And her version is very unique and specific to her influences, which I named earlier at the beginning of the episode, and you'll hear them pretty clearly in this version of it. So if you want to hear the full version, I'm going to link the YouTube link in the episode description. Make sure you go and support her, stream her music on your streaming apps. If you still purchase music, do that, buy her stuff, because I can tell you as a creative person, even if it's 10 cents, making any amount of money on something that you put your heart into like that, it feels good. So go out there and support our girls, even if it is 20 years later. Why not? All right, we're going to close the show out there. For more of Chris, you can find him on Instagram and YouTube at Chris Mayick, ChrisMayek. Please be sure to search and follow Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, to get our regular episode coverage. Every week we go from the very beginning of Sailor Moon, the original English dub, and just episode by episode if anyone's just joining us for this interview. And for more of me, Alex, you can find me on Instagram at AlexSummersSFE. Moonstar Radio and Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast, are created for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. We do not claim any ownership over the music or sound effects used during the creation of this show. All licensed and copyrighted materials used during the creation of Moonstar Radio and Moonstar, a Sailor Moon podcast belong expressly to the license and copyright holders.
upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops, where above the chimney tops, that's where